those who don't know, could you just explain like what Allston Pudding is and what like is the main goal there?
Allston Pudding is a music blog based in Boston, and we highlight a lot of local artists in our local music scene through different pieces on the site, whether it's a show review or an album premiere, interviews with artists, different sort of fun feature content, sort of focused on artists that you don't see covered by larger media outlets or played on the radio.
We're all volunteer run, so all of our writers and editors, photographers, artists, all contribute to the blog.
At the core of Allston Pudding is that we're more like music fans coming at it from that lens. We didn't go into this sort of being like we're gonna have New York Times level writing and coverage. We kind of look at it in like a peer way. People who read our blog are excited about that because it comes off as less pretentious. It's more in a way that you can easily digest if you're not like a classically trained musician or a journalist.
How did you each come to work at Allston? How long have you guys been working there?
I interned at a social media agency with Daniel Schiffer, who's one of the co-founders of Allston Pudding. And it was still pretty new. This was summer of 2011. And I found out about it from a video that they posted on their YouTube channel. And I was like, oh, you run a music blog. You seem cool. If you ever want more people to get involved, let me know. And I convinced him to let me join, basically. I just kind of grew from there, got more and more involved. They really took a chance on me. And I think that kind of inspired me to sort of offer that chance to other people. When people apply to Allston Pudding, we ask them for writing samples, but we also interview them to get to know them. I'd much rather take a chance on somebody who I think fits our vibe and would get along really well with us and has the passion for the local music scene rather than somebody who's a really, really good writer. Jackie, I don't know if you want to tell the story of how you got on.
So I moved from Tallahassee, Florida to Boston and went to the Northeastern Journalism School. I knew that I wanted to do journalism and arts journalism, so that had been a thing for me from the get-go. And then all throughout high school and college, I had always read music blogs and music publications. So when I moved here, I just kind of was like, well, this is the biggest city that I'd ever lived in, and I know that they have a good, an awesome pop and music scene. So I bet that there are some music publications looking for writers, and I just Google searched and Allston Pudding came up, and I, followed them while I was at Northeastern, and then eventually applied to write when they had open applications, interviewed, and then started writing, and then eventually moved my way up to editing.
Jackie was that rare form of a really good writer, but also really fit the vibe.
How do you start off? What's the entire process for formulating these interviews?
I mean, this is what I really have always loved about Allston Pudding is whatever you're into, you can pitch. You can be like, hey, I'm going to try and contact this person to interview them, any idea that you have. And it's pretty flexible in that way, which I feel makes for really good content, because it's you're not being assigned anything that you're not passionate about or interested in.
We used to have sort of assigning content as a thing that we would do to sort of just keep pieces going up on the site super regularly, but we saw that didn't really produce excitement out of our writers or good writing when they felt like they had to do something. And so we've really moved away from that and just become really freeform with what our writers want to do. And I think that's important for sort of fostering creativity.
We do group brainstorms, and we have before COVID, we had pizza parties, barbecues, and just hangout sessions, more informal meeting style.
Yeah,
So
and, like,
it's nice when we
bowling.
can like hang out.
Is there anything you think like any more major things that changed with the onset of COVID and all of that?
It's definitely switched over like what we focus on content wise on the site. Since there are no shows anymore, a lot of our content used to be driven by like what shows were coming up, like where people were going out to review, or like writing little previews for shows to try to get people to go to them. It honestly is kind of refreshing though, because that's like a step that we've been wanting to take for a while, but it's been like slow to get around to. Moving towards more frequent interviews and feature content in that way has been good for us. We used to do meetings in person where we would brainstorm ideas and things like that. And obviously, we're doing them all through Zoom. I like it. Like, I miss having people around to brainstorm, but it definitely makes it easier because you don't expect everybody to like get in their car, get on their bike, get on the bus to like come over to one spot where we all meet.
Do you think it's had more of like a positive or of a negative effect on the work environment in total?
Work environment, it's been positive. Content wise, I'm neutral about it. I'm like, we're still writing good things, and I do miss shows, so they kind of balance each other out.
We're talking about how you supported artists. Like, could you expand on that? Like, but by what it means to support them?
You know, writing about them on the site, interviewing them. When we had shows, we would be booking a lot of local bands on that. We haven't done one in a bit, but we have curated local mixtapes, and so people could discover new music that way.
Why do you think that's so important? Like in this culture where like mainstream just kept getting bigger and bigger, like why do you think it's important to really bring out these local artists?
As a musician, you don't really make much money off of your actual music. You know, the way that you have to make money is by going on tour and selling merchandise. The only way that promoters can get to know new artists is if publications write about them and bands get buzz in that way. And so in order for local artists in Boston to get more popular and get put on tours, get signed to labels and things like that, you need smaller publications like ours to tell people about them. If the promoter doesn't know who they are, they might not really take a chance on them. But if they see that somebody like Allston Pudding or a different publication in our city has like co-signed on them, they'd be more willing to do it because they'd be like, okay, like somebody knows who these people are. They're going to bring at least a few friends, maybe even some fans to the show.
As someone who's always like interacted with music and like been looking at a band or a musician on like a CD case or something and hearing their music, it's way different when you actually get to like talk to the person and meet them. Like, remember that they're like real people too, and not just these like, you know, kind of figures, but they're also like creative artists, you know, that are passionate about what they're doing, and want to talk about what they're doing. And it's really special to just be able to make connections with those like real people who are like making really cool art.
Thinking back to when you were a high schooler, does working at Allston Pudding align with what you had planned growing up?
I had subscriptions to like music magazines all throughout high school, so I knew I always wanted to be able to write something and have it published.
I've always known that I wanted to do stuff with writing. I feel really passionately about music, so I figured this is something that I can write about, and it's been a really great time.
For me, like Jackie, I like had a Rolling Stone subscription, and I was obsessively watching MTV and VH1 and like going to shows with my mom and just like super into music, like huge fan. There was at one point when I was like 12 where I was like, I want to write for Rolling Stone. I want to be Rob Sheffield. But like there was always something holding me back, and I think it's like just pressure from my parents to make money. I ended up going to business school. I went to Bentley. I went in thinking that I would study finance, I would become an investment manager, I would make a lot of money. I changed my major a few times. got into like filmmaking, truly did not know what I wanted to do, and I should have transferred out of Bentley. Ended up just graduating with a degree in economics and not really knowing what to do. But I fell into marketing and social media, which I definitely have become super passionate about. That gave me the opportunity to sort of use my business degree in a way that was also still creative. Allston Pudding has given me the opportunities to grow and discover what I truly am passionate about, and that is working in the music industry. Even though Allston Pudding isn't a moneymaker, it's still like a really good opportunity for us to like fill that creative void and sort of like find our passions.
In society, there is like, we have like this whole idea of like, if it doesn't make money, it's not worthwhile. Like, what advice could you really give, like all three of you, like to high school students like who want to maybe go into liberal arts but aren't sure if they should risk it? Like, what would you tell them?
I would say I don't know what you're talking about because I make six figures.
But like at the core of it, I think that if you know what you want to do, like don't stop anyone else from telling you otherwise. Like I think I learned that when I went to Bentley. Like I should have gotten a high paying job, but like would I be happy? No, I wouldn't. I much prefer where I am now, even though it took me longer to get there.
Think outside the box and follow, you know, what you really like. And it's also never too late to like change your career.
Like one of the questions that I really wanted to ask is like, have there been like any writers like I know like that have had a resounding impact?
When I started writing for Allston Pudding, I really wanted to be like sound different than a lot of the other larger publications, the certain tones that they had for staff writers. Too often I find it's about the writer trying to sound like smart or relevant or hip rather than actually constructively talking about the music, like almost like the opposite of what you're asking, where it's like I wanted to sound different than a lot of other, specifically music writing that I had, music journalism writing that I had read. Like specific writers who have influenced me, like Chuck Klosterman was a big one for me. Like the way he kind of writes about music and pop culture in sort of like the larger analytical sense rather than just like at face value. I like the way he approaches his like analysis, so I try to do that.
I grew up like obsessively watching MTV and VH1. A person that was always on them was Rob Sheffield, who's a writer for Rolling Stone. I really like his approach to writing because, like me, he's like a huge like fanboy, and that's kind of how he approaches it. And he also has like, he's not like stuck to one genre, and he's not like pretentious about his music writing. He's not like a rock dude, which is like a lot of the people that you see on Rolling Stone. And he does love rock music, but he's also like unabashedly obsessed with One Direction and Harry Styles and Taylor Swift. And I love that about him because he's able to like not care that he's he's probably like in his 40s, 50s now, and obsessed with Harry Styles, and he does not care.
This blog is like a collection of diverse opinions that like readers may not necessarily be in agreement with. Like, have you ever received like any backlash, or like have there been any comments that like disagree with what you're saying? And like, just if so, like how do you deal with that?
They're usually a really good learning opportunity for us to sort of look at it and say, you know what, this person is angry at us or trying to teach us something, and they're right, and we need to accept that, apologize, and learn and do better.
How do you balance working at Allston Pudding with your day job?
The like ideal way to go about it is like, well, since I love doing this, it shouldn't feel like you know, a second job on top of my day job. I find it really helpful to just remind myself that when it's all said and done, like when this piece is finished, I'm gonna feel so proud of myself. This is something that feeds my creativity and my mental health.
I think it's important to set yourself deadlines and expectations that you can meet, because when you're setting yourself up for something and you're never reaching that, it can feel really stressful and really get to you and affect your mental health. So like if I have writers that I'm the editor for, like I tell them like, you have to have something for me, you know, the day before it's supposed to publish so that I have enough time to look over it. So I'm giving myself a full day there to look it over depending on what my day looks like that day. Instead of being like, you got to send it to me an hour before it goes up. Because that's when you start to stress yourself out.
If there's anything you guys would like to add, just like a last minute thing.
There's time for you to pursue all manner of things that you want to pursue. Like you can, you know, it's okay to have a maybe a shitty day job, excuse my language, but you know, while you're, you know, getting out of that, like go home and write, and go home and like reach out to bands.
One thing that I didn't really do in high school that I wish I had done more of was like get more involved in different extracurriculars. I was an extrovert, but like I just like went to school for school, and then I rode horses. I was a horse girl. And then I would go to concerts with my friends. And those are the three things that I did in high school. Like I wish that I, you know, played music more, or, you know, joined clubs at school. And that was a thing that I got more into in college. But I think that doing it in high school it helps you try a bunch of different things and sort of figure out what you like, but in a way that doesn't have like the pressure of getting a good grade or like looking good for your parents or those kind of things, those different pressures. Because I felt so held to those pressures, and I wish that there were more outlets for me to explore more of that. Get more involved in things that you like, because when you're doing it when you're younger, you really learn what you want to do, and there's less room for you to make mistakes, and you're like making the mistakes at the right time in your life.
It's never too late to change like your career path or interests. Like don't like tie a bow on something and say, okay, this is all that it's ever going to be. High schoolers are young. I'm also like, I'm 28. I'm still very young, and I have to remind myself of that. Like, if I want to do something else, I have so much time to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you both.